Okay, so welcome everybody, and I am happy to be here. I'm in a conference this week. As part of my professional development, your professors are required to attend professional conferences once a year, and the university sponsors us to go there. Some of these meetings are important for accreditation. For example, those of you who are psychology majors or human development majors, our program at One Pacific is certified to offer the family life education. So you have noticed that on my signature, I sign my name like this. I sign my name like this. Then I do this. So I am a certified family life educator. So our HDFS graduates or students who double major or pick up a minor in HDFS, Human Development and Family Sciences. You take about 10 or so courses, child development, adolescent development, adult with death and dying. There's 10 courses you take. You then become provisionally certified. There are a few hoops to jump for you to become provisionally certified. And then when you have 1 year or so experience in the social sciences, you are able to do this to your name too. So those of you who are social work majors, HDFS, psychology, criminal justice, if you're interested in knowing what this is, I will be more than happy to walk you through what that looks like, what that is. And so as part of our designation as One Pacific, I have to attend those meetings, and I sit on a national board with the National Council for Family Relations, the parent organization that hosts the conference, that oversees that designation. So we are getting ready to renew our programs for that certification. And so those are some of the reasons why I have to be at the conference. So yeah, so that's what's happening with me. Kiddos are doing great. Soccer is done for one of them. The other has a game on Saturday. So I'm super excited for that. They are not excited because it's the end of soccer for them. So they are not very happy about it. Objectives were uploaded for part 2 of chapter 12. And so today the plan is to walk you through these remaining objectives for this chapter. Hope you've enjoyed it. Social psychology. There's an entire branch of psychology called social psychology that helps us understand why people behave the way they do when they're in groups and how groupthink works, the intricacies of attraction and romance, human sexualities. That's a different branch of the social sciences. There's gender development in the social sciences. You can become a sexual health expert in different forms. You can become a sexologist. Dr. Snitkier on our campus, she has a PhD in sociology with a major in gender studies. So all of these are branches of psychology, including social psychology. A lot of my professors for my graduate program were social psychologists. So this chapter gives you a glimpse of an entire branch of psychology. So that's what we are continuing to unpack in this chapter, and we're going to finish that today. I will talk about what comes next at the end, because there are a couple of things I need you to be aware of. So I'll talk about that at the end. Are there any questions about our agenda today as we seek to address these remaining objectives for chapter 12? I have 2 or 3 videos I want to show you to make some connections to some of these things. So we'll watch those somewhere in the presentation today. Do you have any questions about what we are planning to do? If you can make it, Sunny, I'll pay in cash. You know, I'm a leaf peeper. I missed the season. Can you believe that? A lot of the leaves are gone. I went to this spot to look for this tree. It's shed all its leaves. I missed it. Last weekend, I was out driving around looking for the best trees. Some of my friends think I'm obsessed. I'm not obsessed. Just take good pictures. Yeah, well, whether they're good or not is a different thing, but I like to see trees and the beautiful colors. So what I want to do is have a slide with the 2019 picture when I started leaf peeping, 2020, 2021. So I missed the 2021 season. I am bummed, truly, truly, truly bummed. So anyway, we pick it up on objective 11, I believe it is, and it's talking about antisocial relations. And so in this section, we pick it up by talking about prejudice and its roots. So what are the roots of prejudice? You have what is called the scapegoat theory. And so the research shows that economically frustrated people tend to express heightened prejudice. So if you're poor, money is tight, you tend to show more prejudice. You are prejudiced and have these perceptions of people who have more than you, and that can be frustrating. Another piece of research evidence at the scapegoat theory basically is saying someone is responsible for your problem. And it helps us understand why someone has to be blamed for something. A lot of times that happens. Those of you of the Christian persuasion are familiar with the story of Adam and Eve. So God told Adam and Eve, enjoy the garden, there's lots to do, there's a lot of things to enjoy, just one thing, don't touch this one tree in the center of the garden. And so the devil tempts Eve, and Eve eats the fruit. Some people think it was an apple. I don't know why. I don't know what fruit it was. So she eats it, and then she says to Adam, hey, it's pretty good. You want to have a bite? So he has a bite, and then the dominoes fall. So God says, hey, why are you hiding from me? And they say, oh, we're naked. And God says, who told you that? And they say, and God says, you ate from the tree that I told you not to eat. So Adam comes up with the best response to that quandary. And he says, it's not my fault. It's the woman you put in the garden. It's her fault. Instead of, hey, I am sorry, I goofed up. I ate the apple. No, scapegoat theory explains that Adam needed to find a scapegoat. He needed to explain how it wasn't not his fault. Someone had to take the blame. It wasn't me. I'm innocent. It's this woman you put here. Wasn't very funny after that, was it? So a lot of times when things go wrong, people have a natural tendency to seek to blame other people for it. Experiments create temporary frustration, intensify prejudice. So if you want to learn more about the scapegoat theory, this is addressed in objective 11 in your, objective 11 in your text, okay? Next concept, as we look at the roots of prejudice and why someone would have a prejudice against other people, is a concept called Schadenfreude. Meant to look up how to pronounce this word, and I didn't get to it. Potato, you get the idea. Chicago, Cara. What? Chicago pronunciation. Chicago, I've heard Chicago a lot of times. It doesn't change its location, doesn't change what it is. I was like, I don't know why I was so That's all right. That's right. He's from Chicago. Chicago, Chicago, Chicago. So, I have a story for you. So pleasure is derived by someone from another person's misfortune. I'll give you a story. Once upon a time with my kiddos, we used to really enjoy going to the Children's Museum. How many of you have been there? A lot of you take care of kiddos. Children's Museum is fun. First time you go there. My kids wanted to go there every weekend.
I was there last Tuesday with my friend and her 1-year-old daughter. It was like, they all had the time.
Exactly. It was like that for my kids, and for many, many weeks, we would go there every weekend until I didn't want to go there anymore. I was sick and tired of it. But they would have tons and tons and tons of fun. And so I can't remember which station, but my kids wanted to go and play with stuff that was in there. And so my kids and other kids were waiting for this. It was an exhibit, but kids could go and play with this thing and check it out. So this one kid was taking forever and wasn't moving along for other folks to have a turn. So I don't know what happened, but this kid hurt themselves on this exhibit. They hurt themselves, parent ran there, the staff were running to help the kiddo. I could see one of the kids with a big fat smirk on their face. Yeah, it was going to be their turn next, and get out of the way. You got what was coming to you. My turn. So explains this concept, how at times people derive pleasure from another person's misfortune because they tend to benefit if they have a misfortune. Yeah. Give me an example of what you mean by that.
Well, like, you saying pleasure derived by someone else's fortune. Are you saying like people take pleasure into listening to the struggles, like knowing that this person struggled with me?
Say you're running a race and someone sprains their ankle when they fall. Someone might derive pleasure because they get to benefit. Now they are, if they were number 2 and the person who was number 1 gets hurt, they might derive pleasure from that person getting hurt because now they are number 1 and they might win the race. Does that make sense? And so with the kids at the Children's Museum, the one kid who was hogging this one exhibit got hurt. And I watched this one kid really be happy that it's my turn. Get out of the way, go and you have your misfortune elsewhere, not here, it's my turn. Other kids were empathetic, they were sad, they were worried. They wanted to know the other kids, if the other kid was okay. But the one kid had this big fat smirk, the one who was next had a big fat smirk on their face. Good for you, kind of smirk. So that's one example. And the race example, I hope you that carries and resonates and helps you remember this concept. We continue to unpack this whole notion of antisocial relations, why some people are not nice, why some people are mean, and where prejudice comes from. So there are some cognitive shortcuts. We categorize people by gender, by their ethnicity, by their race, age. Other factors may lead to stereotyping people. So you have what is called out-group homogeneity. You have what is called other race effect, cross-race effect, or own race bias. And what you have in that figure that is coming from your text is part of a research study where people were asked to categorize mixed race people. So that helps us understand this whole concept of categorization, especially the other race effect. When New Zealanders quickly classified 104 photos by race, those of European descent more often than those of Chinese descent classified the ambiguous middle two photos as Chinese. So they simply said to these 104 research participants, we want you to categorize these 104 pictures by race, Chinese or Caucasian. And so there are two ambiguous photos there in the middle. And those folks are almost in the middle, mixed race. And so I will say that one more time, what they were looking for, what they found in this study and how they help us understand categorization by race in this case, or other race effect. When New Zealanders quickly classified 104 photos by race, those of European descent more often than those of Chinese descent classified the ambiguous middle two photos as Chinese. One way we simplify the world is to form categories, helping you understand this concept. So we simplify what we see, what we understand, what we come across by forming a category of some sort, right? In categorizing others, we often stereotype them, overestimating the similarity of those within another group. And that's what we mean by out-group homogeneity. The other race effect or cross-race effect or own race bias is the tendency to recall faces of one's own race more accurately than faces of other races. It emerges during infancy, between 3 and 9 months of age. We also have an own age bias, better recognition memory for faces of our own age group. You are likely to remember people of your own race more accurately. You are likely to remember and recall your experiences with people of your own age. The availability heuristic is the tendency to estimate the frequency of an event by how readily it comes to mind. Vivid cases are more memorable and they come to mind easily. So it's no surprise that they feed our stereotypes. Impartial observers may blame victims for assuming the world is just and that people therefore get what they deserve and deserve what they get. So we are continuing to unpack why and how prejudice comes to be. And categorization is one way people simplify people and experiences, okay? I think I have done my best to help you understand those concepts. Are there any questions at this time? All right. Remembering vivid cases. So I talked a little bit at this availability heuristic, where things that happened or how we remember really big events, really significant events, okay? So for example, that figure you're seeing there is talking at how people stereotype or can be prejudiced against folks who identify as Muslim, people of the Muslim faith. Why? Because a lot of people might associate the Muslim faith, people who are Muslim, with terrorism. Why? Most notably because of a really big event that most of us cannot and will never forget, 9/11. Every year we celebrate it. So even if you were born after 9/11, you know what 9/11 is. And so this concept of availability heuristic is those big things become ingrained in our mind. Those big events in your life become ingrained in your mind. And they lead to some of the stereotypes that we then have. And that's just one example of an availability heuristic because of this big event that we are constantly reminded of, that we constantly think of, where then we might have, where folks might have prejudice against Muslims. So again, continuing to unpack this concept of roots of prejudice, What other groups do people have stereotypes towards or against? So your book gives you an example of Muslims. What other groups of people tend to be prejudiced a lot? Portland is weird. So hint, hint. Yes, ma'am? Mm. There you go. What a great example. My advisor was very, very nice. She's white. We remain wonderful friends. And I remember when I was being profiled in my graduate program for some of the research work I had done, and they came to take pictures of me. So we were talking about it, and she said, "Oh, can I see the pictures?" Well, she knew I was going to do a photo shoot. The campus had a professional photographer who did, that's all they did. So we looked at the pictures, and she said to me, "Which one do you think?" So I showed her the picture I liked most. And she said, "You know, you can take my advice or leave it, but why don't you go with this one? You have a big smile on this one." And she said, "You know, I hope you don't take offense to this, but you're a black man, Courage, a nice black man. But there are people who are prejudiced against black men, who might see black men as aggressive. So having a smile can do something to that effect." So we went with that picture because when I went home, I thought it was the nicer picture anyway. But can you see? Some of you will do 410 papers. You know what the 410 paper is? A lot of people love them. If your advisor says, "Do you want to do a 410 paper?" you must say, "Yes, I cannot wait to do a 410 paper." I'm kidding. You have to thoughtfully go into those kinds of decisions. The 410 paper is like a mini thesis paper. Not all of you, depending on your major, might have an option to do the 410 paper. I have graded some of these 410 thesis papers. They are 20, 30 pages long. And some folks have done wonderful, wonderful papers on prejudice. Walking into a store and being looked at different, being treated different, and the roots of prejudice. So that came to mind with that example. That's a great example. Thank you. What other groups tend to struggle with prejudice, negative prejudice? There's one I want to hear about. Muslims, black men. What other groups can you think of?
Only because every time when they wear the hijab, people always assume, "Oh, you're a terrorist," or "You're scared," or "You're plotting something." But really, it's just their culture.
Yeah.
Like that's just how they dress, and it's deeper meaning to that.
Yeah. So Muslim women.
Yeah, Muslim women.
Muslim women. Anyone of the Muslim faith, but especially Muslim women, because we can identify them from a mile away because of the hijab. Yeah. In France, there could be even greater prejudice against French female Muslims. You know what? Have you ever heard the term black widow? What is a black widow?
From my understanding, it's like the husband. I don't know.
No.
Something
you gave me the definition of a widow, but as we talk about your example, female Muslims, black widow, say that loudly, Faith. No, that's the spider. That's what a black widow spider does. It mates and then it eats the male companion. No, but as we talk about female Muslims, so no. Thanks for trying. Happens a lot in Nigeria and in France, a couple of times in France, but a lot in Nigeria especially. Black widows are women of, Muslim faith who then become suicide bombers. So they hide the bombs under their gown.
There's Black game called Black Muslim woman. Like a slot machine game. It's called Black Widow.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it a highly racially charged, inflammatory game, you think?
I
don't know.
think so. I played it a few times. I used to play it back home, but it's literally like a Muslim woman with like her hijab and in all black, and then like a bunch of jewels, and then there's one guy in the game, like in the real. I don't know why I remember this. It was at one of the bars I used to work at.
Okay. Might check that out and see what that's like. There's one, thank you, wonderful examples, but there's one group of folks who tend to face a lot of prejudice. Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you. In most of the world, gay and lesbian people cannot openly and comfortably disclose who they are and who they love. Dozens of countries have laws criminalizing same-sex relationships. Explicit anti-LGBTQ prejudice persists, even in countries with legal protections in place. Cultural variation is enormous, ranging from the 6% in Spain who say that homosexuality is morally unacceptable to 98% who say the same in Ghana. Another group targeted for prejudice who hold beliefs that differ from our own. So that's coming from your text. Okay, so I think this one we have done justice to. Any questions so far? And there are many other groups, right? Think of people of color who are already a minority group, who then identify as LGBTQ. They are now a member of a second minority group. And then if they sit in a wheelchair or have a disability, they are now in a third minority group. So as we think about advocacy, lobbying, social justice issues, there would be a lot to unpack there, right? As we think about equity and equality, that conversation can take a different turn when we think about prejudice. A lot of that work, a lot of those conversations are stemming from the roots of prejudice, yeah? Okay, hope this is making sense. Let's talk now about aggression. Aggression is any physical or verbal behavior intended to harm someone, whether done out of hostility or as a calculated means to an end. It emerges from the interaction of biology and experience. We will unpack those two concepts in the next two slides. At the nonprofit, we deal a lot with aggression. A lot of my training of the skills trainers is managing aggression. Sometimes microaggressions between staff, oftentimes aggression, both physical and verbal, between kiddos. Last Sunday, we were managing a challenging situation between two kids who were not gelling and they had fought the day before. The fight was pretty aggressive. No one got seriously hurt. The one kid had a black eye. Staff intervened before it got any worse. The fight was so bad. We had a different kid who was so severely impacted by the ruckus, they ran away from the program. So going in on the weekend, it was a little tumultuous and high, tense energy. And we needed to come up with a special plan to make sure that that conflict, that aggression did not devolve further. So those of you who are here because you are going to work with human beings, this is very important because aggression is going to be a big part of what you might need to manage. Those of you who are going into the health field, nursing, medical sciences, all of that good stuff. When I was in the hospital with my sister, there were times my sister got taught with the hospital staff because she was frustrated. And the one time she was asking to be moved closer to the window because she had been in the hospital for 3.5 weeks. So she hadn't seen the sun. She didn't remember what it was like to be outside. So she asked them to move her. She was on the second bed away from the window. She was in a two-person room. Someone was over here. There was a big curtain, and then she was over here. So she wanted to go where she could see the window. And so they were doing it. But the nurse on that particular day, when she had a meltdown and there was some verbal, not aggression, some intense verbal exchanges where she was strong enough to, you know, tell them, hey, I haven't seen outside. I was here first before that person, and I empathize that they're not well, but I want to sit close to the window. And she was, so I walked in as she was charged and having some words for this nurse who was not being very kind to her. So you have to manage aggression, right? Because you're dealing with frustrated, depressed, ill people. That's why we talk at this. How many of you know Serena Williams? Okay, she's very successful. She's done very well for herself. But she has been portrayed as an angry Black woman in some circles. Okay, won't get into any of that. But she had a horrible experience when giving childbirth. In the medical sciences, my friends going into the medical sciences, there has been a lot of prejudice in the past towards women of color, not believing that they are in pain and under addressing their complaints of pain. And so that's something that needs to change, right? Long story of how we get to that prejudice. That's part of what we are unpacking. So this matters to you. This is important for you and your field. If you're a police officer, a lot of folks are scared of the police. There's a reason why. Roots of prejudice are a big part of that fear and that concern. In Minneapolis, they just did a big vote to defund the police, right? Prejudice is a big reason why they got there in the first place. So criminal justice, this matters to you. Social workers, are there any social workers in the room? Yeah. A lot of the kids who feel angry and left out and abandoned tend to be kids of color. A lot of their frustration is, my caseworker doesn't attend to me. And the kids who are most affected, most impacted, tend to be kids of color. So anyway, the point is, this matters and is very relevant to all of your fields. Did I talk at all of your fields? Did I not talk at someone here? Criminal justice, health sciences, my social workers, who else? What other field is represented in this class? Have I addressed all the fields that are here? So we are saying aggression emerges from the interaction of biology and experience. So what does that mean? So biology of aggression, genetic influences. A lot of this information, this knowledge comes from twin studies to understand the role of genes in aggression. There are genetic markers, Y chromosome, monoamine, oxidase, markers that they trace and associate with higher levels of aggression. There are neural influences. Animal and human brains have neural systems that, given provocation, will either inhibit or facilitate aggression. The amygdala, if you remember from chapter 2, is responsible for processing emotional information. The amygdala is connected to and is associated with what then happens in the hippocampus that is responsible for long-term memory. The frontal lobes have an important role in memory and processing our emotions. All of these are neural influences that we can associate with aggression. Biochemical influences, hormones, higher levels of testosterone are associated with higher aggression. Alcohol can interact in interesting ways with genes and neural influences and can lead to aggression and aggressive acts. Let me know if you have any questions. Psychological and sociocultural factors that are associated with aggression. So, criminal justice, you will seek to solve crimes. You will seek to try and understand why people are cruel. You interact with very cruel with people who do incredibly cruel, horrible things. My nursing friends, some of you might go into psychiatric nursing. I know a psychiatric nurse, and she says that can mess your mind because they work with individuals who escaped jail because they were deemed mentally unstable. And so they go into psychiatric facilities. And so psychiatric nurses will work with those people, right? So this is laying a foundation to help those folks understand why some people do things and why some people are aggressive. That's what we are unpacking here. So here we're talking about aversive events, reinforcing and modeling, differences in how cultures model, reinforce, and evoke violent tendencies. Was it this class where I was talking about parenting and how in some cultures, when they are training kids, they might use shame to coach them to get math correct. So one example is in this one particular culture, shame, if the kid keeps failing math, they quickly go and pull their pants down to shame them because they're not doing well in school. First time I heard that was just the weirdest thing. You know, you're doing a thing, you're teaching the kid, you're talking about math and they're not getting it, then you just pull their pants down in front of everybody. That's how you raise kids. In some spaces, that is a very important place. Spanking, right? So cultures, we unpack and talk about all of those things in my parenting class. So if ever you're looking for an additional class, my social science friends, you are probably going to take that. HD 314, we talk about parenting, we talk about all of those things, pros and cons of physical punishment, pros and cons of verbal punishments for children. So we unpack all of that. So basically, there are differences in how cultures raise kids and model and reinforce aggression, basically is what we're talking about. There are some cultures where you talk very strongly. That's how you talk. And if you're not talking like that, you're not making your point. One kid said, you didn't talk very assertively, so I didn't know you were serious. Because in their culture, if you want to be serious, then you gotta talk very assertively. Otherwise, you are not serious. It's a cultural thing. Well, bro, how I talk, I don't need to shout and yell. I'm coming across the way I'm coming across, and that's okay. And yeah, I was dead serious. That hate speech is not allowed in the program. So anyway, role models, very, very important. Media models for violence, television, films, music, video games, Kara. Black Widow, I want to check it out.
It's not a video game.
It's a game of
yeah.
Okay, I want to check it out. But I was telling my other class how a student snuck in some violent game. I told my other class, Grand Theft Auto. This is a 12 or 13-year-old kiddo. And so they're not allowed to play those games in the program. I played at home all the time. Well, not here, bro. Not when you're here. You can't even have that. So that's going into your contraband box. And next time your caseworker is here, they're gonna take it and put it away for you. And hopefully you never get that back. You're way too young to be exposed to that kind of violence, because that probably explains why you get into so many fights. Because that's all you do. That's all you've done all day. When you were a neglected kid, you might not know that or agree with it, but you were living in the fast lane, and that's not a good way to live. So these are psychological and socio-cultural factors that help explain aggression. Are there any questions? This figure is really nice because it's a nice summary to explain aggressive behavior. So it's a summary of everything we've talked about. Biological influences, genes, etc. Psychological influences, having aggressive role models. children who live in homes where there's domestic violence, sometimes we see aggressive behaviors in those kids because that's what they know. You punch your way out of stuff. If you are not happy with something, punch your way out of it. So having aggressive role models is one of the psychological influences. And then social cultural influences, parental models of aggression, rejection from a group, exposure to violent media. So remember this is really good information. Right, we're gonna switch gears and we're gonna talk now about attraction. So psychology of attraction, you have what is called proximity and mere exposure effect. Many of you are gonna hook up and connect with your peers in college. Why? Because you spend a lot of time with these folks you are in college with. Huh? So proximity, folks you are close to, that's where it might happen. You have modern matchmaking, online matchmaking, you have speed dating in different forms. All of that leads to attraction. So we are turning a turn. We were talking about antisocial relations or aggressive relations. Now we are talking about the good stuff, attraction and love and all of that kind of stuff. Physical attraction is a really big part of pro-social relations, influenced by culture. You have similarity. Many of you, if you are not yet attached to a significant other, you may connect with someone with whom you are similar to. Influence is the likelihood that a relationship will endure. If you don't, the odds of that being an enduring relationship will not be high. They will be higher for people who are similar to each other. You have a theory called the reward theory of attraction. You will be connected to and attracted to folks where there is more benefit than there is cost, more rewards. You feel good when you see this person. Your heart skips a beat. You feel weak in the knees. You have butterflies in your tummy when you're close to them. Your nose is activated when you're close to them. You can smell them. Your nose is working. If your nose kicks in, there's some attraction there. So the reward theory of attraction helps explain that. Right? Think of your parents. How many of you think about your parents? For some of you, the similarity that holds them together is apparent. For some people, it's not. But for some of you, you might be able to recognize that they might have, different tastes in music, but their religious beliefs are fairly similar. Their political beliefs are fairly similar. There's something central, very important where there's similarity. The less similar they are, the more conflict they are likely to have. So, and even if they don't get along, the reason why they got together in the first place, there was something similar about them at that time in that season of their lives that brought them together.
Why did they always say opposite?
Because people tend to see the things that are different about them. So for example, people might think that Itai and I are very, very different people. My family does not like my choice of music. They don't like it at all. Okay. There are many points of difference between Itai and I. So people might say, you are so different. She's an introvert. I'm an extrovert. We are different. So people might say we are opposites. We are not. Our religious beliefs, very similar. Our values, very similar. Our parenting style, very similar. So the important things that are make or break things, we are similar in those areas. So we tend to see the things where there's difference, but they don't really matter. Itai and I are not going to have a breakup or a major conflict over our very different tastes in music. Make sense?
Yeah.
Romantic love, you have what is called passionate love, aroused state of intense positive absorption in another, usually present at the beginning of a romantic relationship. The passion almost always wanes, starts to go down like this. So you mustn't hook up and get connected to a significant other solely on the basis of passion, because passion will do this, then it will do this over time. There has to be other things that hold you guys together and not just sex and passion. That's why they say the sex needs to come a little later, because that can it can confuse things. You know, those are intense feelings, but they do this over time. So if that's all there is to it, the likelihood of an enduring relationship become smaller. Make sense? Might not make any sense. Don't worry about it. I have a class called Marriages and Contemporary Family Issues. We unpack that a whole lot in that class to some extent. And then there are masters in marriage and family therapy. They unpack that a whole lot more in those classes too. So the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't really know much. There's so much more to learn, you know? Okay. You have companionate love, deep affectionate attachment. Testosterone, dopamine, and adrenaline levels subside, but the oxytocin remains. So this is not associated or connected to the passion in a strong sense in that way. But there's this deep affectionate attachment with this other person. There's equity in such relationships. You see each other as equals. There's a high, safe sense of self-disclosure in this kind of love. It's okay to be vulnerable and to be yourself and to share your thoughts without retribution or fear of being judged. You can have compassionate love without those things. Self-disclosing and intimacy plus mutually supportive equity equals enduring companionate love. So there are models and theories that we study in that marriages class that kind of really begins to unpack. There's so much here, but this is just an introductory class. Any questions about love and passionate love and companionate love? No? All right. Switch gears. Let's now talk about altruism. This is the unselfish concern for the welfare of others. Might lead to what is called bystander intervention. The anti-bullying laws and policies in the high schools you came from, they talked at bystander intervention, right? In society, there's this social contract that if you see something, say something. That's bystander intervention. You have situational factor influence, which is the presence of others might move us to get involved. So the decision-making process of bystander intervention is depicted in that figure you're seeing, right? So what determines whether someone will respond to someone in need? So it depends. So getting involved and helping someone who's in need depends on whether you notice the incident or not. If you do not notice the incident, you're not likely to help. If you do notice, yes, ma'am.
Didn't something just happen in either like New Jersey or Philly, where a bunch of people were walking past the girl that was raped outside the car?
Oh, wow.
That happened in Chicago, like not even a year or so ago. And it was like in the alley and nobody said anything. And then the bar was closed down for a couple of weeks while they like investigated. I'm almost positive that was New Jersey. It just happened like a month, not even.
That is terrible.
What? Yeah.
Oh, people filmed it?
Yeah.
Wow. That is
I
sad.
know, I think I was like combining the two because it was at a girl in Chicago. They like had the security guards outside, and even the security guard that far didn't say anything. You know,
Oh, wow.
3 guys that took the girl out to the alley.
Oh,
There were
wow.
people walking through the alley. You know, disgusting.
It's terrible. So whether someone gets involved may depend on whether they notice the incident, whether they interpret the incident as an emergency, whether they assume responsibility. So it sounds like a lot of folks didn't assume any responsibility. And then they yeses to those things leads to an attempt to help. So if we are to ask you a question and say, what might lead someone to help? This is what you need to remember. Before helping, one must first notice an emergency, then correctly interpret it, and then feel responsible. This is adapted from a study that was done by Darley and Latane in 1968, long time ago. Responses to a situated emergency: when people thought they alone heard the calls for help from a person they believed to be having an epileptic seizure, they usually helped. When they thought 4 others were also hearing the calls, fewer than 1/3 responded. And that's part of the data that came out of this study that I just referred to from 1968. So all the folks who walked past that horrible incident all thought someone is going to do something, but surely I'm not the only person who's seeing this. Yeah. Someone is called it in.
There's a video on YouTube of a girl in a mall too, and it's like, oh my gosh, I watched this years ago. I can't remember the full concept, but it's basically like they're acting as if somebody's getting kidnapped and seeing if anybody says something, and it took like 3.5 hours for somebody to finally like try and help.
Yeah.
And everyone's excuse was because they thought that someone was.
In my marriage and family issues class, I show a video of a skit. It's a skit, it's an experiment. They have a 13-year-old do a mock wedding by, what's the big square in New York? Times Square. So so this guy, this old man is marrying this 13-year-old and they're doing their vows. It's an experiment. People were walking by and people were like, that looks so wrong. That looks like a child bride. A lot of people didn't do anything. But that one guy who says, what are you doing? This is a child. That guy is my hero. And it's a black man. Oh, he was ready to suck. He was wanting to suck this man. And he said, this is a child. There's someone called the police and he didn't have a phone and he was livid. And I was like, man, we need more folks like that. I want to be like that guy and help and not be a bystander. Helping someone depends on the characteristics of the person, situation, and internal state. And hopefully that has all taken a different turn for you guys because you have learned this information. And so what contributes to the likelihood that a person will help another in need? And that's all the stuff I was talking about here. Noticing, interpreting it as an emergency, and assuming responsibility. So happiness breeds helpfulness. So learn to be happy. Take care of yourself. School is hard, it's challenging. Balancing school and your jobs and your family and everything can be hard. But work on being happy because that will breed helpfulness. Helpfulness breeds happiness. So if someone is feeling like they are not very helpful, I think they're not very happy, try and help others. I know a friend of mine who was diagnosed as bipolar 30 years ago. And he said it was pretty bad and I crashed. And he said his therapist advised him to get involved in volunteering in his community. And he said that was the medicine I needed. I derive so much joy when I help other people. So he sits on the board of Teen Challenge in his state, and he's doing very, very well for himself. So I have seen what it looks like for someone with a mental condition, bipolar, and his medicine is helping other people. And he does that for a living, and he loves it. From conflict to peace involves perceived incompatibility of actions, goals, or ideas, may create a positive change or a destructive process. More on this. Helping people to agree on regulations, to communicate better, and to be more aware of responsibilities towards others fosters cooperation. The spiral of conflict also feeds and is fed by distorted mirror image perceptions, in which each party views itself as moral and the other as unworthy and evil intentioned. Perceptions such as these can become self-fulfilling prophecies. The next slide, we talk about how we can make peace. More contact with people who are different from yourself. Cooperation. Communication, where you seek a win-win orientation. Don't only think about yourself and what you can get and what you're trying to get, but always be thinking about how you can have a win-win situation with other people. Conciliation. Graduated and reciprocated initiatives in tension reduction. In my graduate study, I was coming to, straight from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is mostly a Christian nation, so I did not know much about Islam, except for what I saw on movies. So I was oblivious to that. I may have had lots of misconceptions and prejudice against Muslims. So in my qualitative research methods class, the professor said, I want you to make contact with folks who are very different from you on this campus, and I'm going to teach you how to do research, how to do qualitative research. So I thought to myself, I want to get to know the Muslim community more. And so I needed to find Muslim students, other Muslim students on campus, befriend them, and get to know them better and do a research study on them, around them. So some of my dearest friends from North Dakota State are these guys from Iran, from Egypt, from Turkey, Muslims. And so became really, really good friends and learned a lot about how they were people just like me, wanting to get a degree just like me, wanting to improve their countries just like me, and they were not terrorists. It was so eye-opening, and I made such a wonderful friend. So that point, that first one on make contact with folks who are not like you and get to know them, because you might be pleasantly surprised by what you learn from them about them. So I share with you this information around what's important in this section. So you have that. Okay, so we're gonna do a true or false exercise. We're gonna do it together as opposed to doing it in groups. So do you wanna stand? If you think it's true, please stand, okay? All right, so low stakes, but it will get your blood flowing and we'll be done in a few minutes, all right? Okay, so number one, compared with people in Western countries, those in East Asian countries are more sensitive to situational influences on behavior. If you think that is true, you can read it. If you think that is true, stand. guesstimate if you. So the rest of you think it's false? So you are the only person, my dear, who got that right. Really? Yeah. Yeah, I said guesstimate. So that is true. Okay. Huh? I can hear you. Okay. Number two, to change people's racist behaviors, we first need to change their racist attitudes. If you think that is true, stand. Okay. You can sit. That is false. You can't change other people in that way. You start with yourself. Yeah, it was, yeah, sometimes the wording is a little wonky donkey, I get it. But yeah, may elicit us to have a conversation. So you change yourself first, because you might not get through to the next person. That's what I tell my kids. If you interact, meet a mean kid, don't worry about them just yet. You focus on how you respond. You can't control other people's actions. You can control yours. Stop there. Then we can worry about the rest later. Chimpanzees are more likely to yawn after observing another chimp yawn. If you think that's true, please stand. You are correct. That is true. Okay. Number four, most people would refuse to obey an authority figure who told them to hurt an innocent person. Okay, read that and think on it, and then stand if you think that is true. Okay, you are correct. That is false. Number five, studies of college and professional athletic events indicate that home teams win 6 in 10 games for most sports. You are correct. That is true. Number six, individuals pull harder in a team tug of war than when they pull in one-on-one tug of war. That is false. Sorry. That's why communism is not a good idea. Because then a lot of folks who could be working even harder and then just chill because there's no reward. So, number seven, the higher the morale and harmony of a social group, the more likely are its members to make a good decision. That is false. Sorry. Number eight, researchers project that other things being equal, global warming of 4 degrees Fahrenheit would induce tens of thousands of additional assaults and murders in the United States alone. So higher heat would lead to more aggression. That is true. It is true. I think there's more rates of violent incidents, aggressive incidents when it's harder.
It's always the first weekend in Chicago when it's warm out.
Yep.
There's probably, I think, last year it was 7 shootings in the night.
Yep.
Yeah.
From research on hiking and loving, it is clear that opposites do attract. We talked about this. It's false, so you are correct. And the last one, we are less likely to offer help to a stranger if other bystanders are present. You are correct. It is true. Yeah. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, I have a video to show you. I will show it to you in a second. So the last day to drop this course, if you want to drop it, is going to be tomorrow. Not only this course, but any of your courses, the last day is tomorrow. So make sure you are communicating with your advisor if you didn't have a good grade at midterm. That's usually the telltale. That's why they give you the midterm grade. So if you didn't have a good result, I reached out to all of my advisees, congratulated the ones with straight 4.0s, the ones who had a D+, D- and Fs. I said to him, talk to me, my friend. Have you spoken to your advisor? You haven't spoken to me. We don't have an arrangement. I have a 2-week policy. A lot of the big assignments you missed and ignored my prompts. You are not likely to come out on top with where you're at. I recommend, I think I said that to some of one or two of my advisees. Usually there's a story there. I empathize with that. But if you are in that situation and you need to consider dropping a course or whatever, that deadline ends tomorrow, okay? If there's a struggle, you might need to consider that. On Tuesday, you will work on a learning check for chapters 9, 10, and what we covered today. It's an online, work at home. I think the next one, the next learning check, I'll bring you in class. We'll do that one in class. But this one, we'll work on it at home, okay? So work from a location of your choice on Tuesday. I will not be here. I'm not coming to class, but you are working on this assignment, okay? And then we meet on Thursday here for chapter 13. Oh, I need to make special arrangements because I know there's no school and I don't have a plan yet for my kids on Thursday. But as always, I always send you an announcement in my WB classes before every class, right? So, are there any questions about what comes next and all of that stuff?
Wait, so there's school for us?
Oh yeah, we'll do school. So I'm wondering if I might need to invite you to do an online live Zoom if I don't have a plan. I'm hoping I have a good plan that won't mess with my ability to be with you for class. Make sense? Okay. This is the video I was going to show you. It's a video I made for this class this time last year. Hello class, I hope you've had a wonderful and restful weekend. And I am doing my best to self-care. This is how I self-care. I love being out in nature. And I need to grow all the places that I've seen in Oregon. 75 waterfalls. I'm on number 16 or number 17. So I have worked it, okay? So what are we working on this coming week? We are in chapter 12 of Myers. And so please do your due diligence to be prepared for class and keep your eyes on my WP classes. My job is simply to report your grades and not to give you grades. So please do your due diligence to make sure you're on top and on task. Best wishes for the coming week and for the rest of the semester. I look forward to spending the rest of the semester with you. If you get an A, you and I both look so good. So take care. And let me know if you want to connect or if you have questions for me. And thank you for being such a wonderful class. I enjoy teaching you. Take care. Bye-bye. That's all I had for you. Take care, my friends, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye, folks online.